Welcome, everybody, to what is a highly anticipated Data Science Festival sandbox session. I've been looking forward to this one since the idea was first discussed, and I have to give massive shout out to Zerve for being up for this super creative session. As soon as we started talking about it, I just knew that we had to do it. And thank you all for being with us today to be part of it. In terms of the session, there's two parts to it. There's some pre-prepared content from Greg and Jean-Dominique, obviously very much focused on vibe coding within that data space. But then as we go into the second half, both of them have really kindly been so up for making this a little bit interactive. So you as attendees can get hands-on. They'll be there to support, answer questions on the fly, and generally speaking, just have some fun. So very much looking forward to it. In terms of that, a couple of bits to call out. Number one, the chat is open, so feel free, jump in, say hello. Let us know who you are, where you are in the world. It's always nice when we do these online sessions, having people join from all over. And then the other piece just to call out is the Q&A feature is also there so that you can ask specific questions within the Q&A as they come up as well. In terms of now, if I could, please ask Greg and Jean-Dominique to turn on their cameras and microphones. Come and join me on this virtual stage. So how are you both doing today? Good to see you, Greg. How are you doing?
Doing great. Good morning.
Amazing stuff. I have to ask, Greg, whereabouts are you based and what time is it where you're joining us from?
I'm calling in from Nevada. It's 6 a.m.
My man, this is what I love to hear. That is some true dedication. So the community love should be being embraced. So there's got to be a mention in the chat at least for joining there with so early. What about yourself, Jean-Dominique? I know you mentioned you're in Paris, a little bit closer to me in the UK, but how's your day going?
Hi. Very good, thank you. Yes, it's I have only 1 hour difference with you.
Nothing. Hey, it's middle of the afternoon. So easy. You're taking it easy, mate. As you guys are here, I am just going to jump into the chat and call out some people. It's always nice to say hello to a few people that are in the chat. So first of all, John, hello from Leeds, UK. Kieran, hello from Dublin. Tamana from Kent. We have another from London, Ipswich, London. UK is popular here. London. Alison, Philadelphia in the good old US of A. We love that. Aaron, John, David from Oxford, beautiful part of the world, Oxford. We love that. Another David straight after you, Armour. Oh man, this list going on. So I'm going to have my work cut out, I think, keeping on top of the chat as the day goes on. Just a couple of bits to call out, a little bit of life admin. The first thing I'm going to call out is the competition. So number one, props to the Zerve team for being so creative and being up for this whole vibe coding session. Second part, there is a competition. In terms of that, I'm actually wearing them. These aren't the glasses that you will be getting. They are brand new, trust me. But Zerve are giving away a pair of Ray-Ban Meta glasses. And to do that, that is tag team with a certificate that everyone who attends the full session will be given. So basically, if you attend the full session, you will receive a Vibe Coding 101 certificate from the team at Zerve. If you then post that on socials and tag Zerve and the Data Science Festival, you qualify to enter the competition. So that is definitely not to be sniffed at. What I'm going to do now, Greg and Jean-Dominique, I'll stop sharing my screen. And then if it's okay, I'll hand over to you, Greg. So the running order for everyone at home, we'll be kicking off with Greg. He'll be tag teaming with Jean-Dominique throughout the session with some pre-prepared content. And then after 45 minutes or so, I'll jump back in and we'll be able to jump into the Q&A and we'll be able to do some hands-on vibe coding, hopefully with your own data if you have it. So if you're ready, Greg, I'll maybe get you to share your screen and go for
Righto.
Oh, Greg's in the chat giving us some extra credits as well. I hope everyone's watching this chat and claiming all of these credits. So I'll be first on. I hope they're not limited, Greg.
No. Anyone that clicks on the link that I just put in the chat will get 25 extra credits that are good for today. Amazing just that you can do pretty much anything you want without running into any.
That's what I love to see. A little heart emoji. A little heart emoji on the screen. I want to see some more heart emojis for Greg and the free credits from Zerve. So that's what we love to see. They're coming now. There's people out there. We love it. In terms of that, Greg, I'll get you to share your screen. You have an audience, and it's over to you.
All right, excellent. Let's see. So we are here today to talk a bit about vibe coding, which is a term that I actually hate. I think it's going to over the coming months, people will start sort of like scorning people that use that phrase. So maybe agentic coding is a better approach, a better saying for it. This is basically the idea of using a development environment for writing code that is specifically connected to some agent that utilizes large language models to make the process easier, whether that might be debugging code or writing code completely from scratch or fleshing out ideas. That's the kind of thing that we're talking about today. And we're going to go through, me and my fellow panelist, Jean-Do. We're going to go through some best practices for doing that, and we'll be using Zerve to utilize that agentic coding environment and talking through what works and what doesn't, showing some live examples of things that work and some things that don't work, actually. So that link in the chat will get everybody, like I said, some free credits. Our free plan does give you some free credits, but this is just a mega bonus credits so that you can not worry about the requests that you're sending into the agent if you do write some code. So let me pop up my screen share here, and we're just going to kind of go along and minimizing stuff. All right, so this is our home page here. And I'm just gonna do a quick little demo and show a couple of things that everyone's sort of aware of what the environment looks like and can get their hands dirty. And then I'm going to kick it over to Jado, and he is going to show some examples of things that work, some projects, go through some tips and tricks in terms of like what are some good ways to utilize these large language models as you're doing this agentic coding. And then he is going to show a project, do some stuff from scratch. And then I'm going to show some things that don't work. So that's kind of the structure of what we're going to talk about today. Be sure and put all your questions in the Q&A because we definitely want to go through those. The more interactive this is, the funner it's going to be. So feel free to ask any question and don't pull any punches. So this should be a lot of fun. With that, let me ask Jean-Do to come on and just do a quick intro and tell us a little bit about himself and his background, and then we'll dive into a quick demo.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. Hi, everyone. So I'm Jean-Do. I'm a senior data scientist here at Zerve for less than 2 months, so I'm quite new. But I worked several years, 8 years in AI and machine learning, mainly in startups in cybersecurity field. Also, I worked for intelligence services, police services, to help them do their investigation with AI and to analyze a lot of data and different kind of data with AI. And also, I have also experience in consulting firms in more traditional fields like banking, insurance, and telco.
That's so funny. The one of the main reasons that I'm a data scientist today, Jean-Do, I don't know if you know this, is that show Numbers that used to be on television in the US. Maybe you don't know it, but I don't know if it played in France. But it's basically about this mathematician guy that solves crime with math. And I was like, yes, I can do that. And then, of course, I've never done anything like that. But yeah, that was my motivation. So if anybody's ever seen that show, definitely shout out in the chat. All right, getting my screen sharing going here. So here we go. Now, let me point out a few things. So later in the session, we're going to have an opportunity for everybody to sort of like have a play and use some of their own data. If you don't have data, but you do want to use some sample data here, there's a bunch of prepackaged data sets that are in here. Titanic's always a good one. This is about the survivors on the Titanic, and it's a data set designed to predict who is likely to survive based on the characteristics of each passenger on the Titanic. So that's a fun data set. There's lots of cool things in here that you can kind of play with. And if you'll just click on that data set and hit add to canvas, it'll open up a new canvas that you can play with that has that data set prepackaged into it. So you can click create canvas here to just jump into a blank project, or you can just start working with the agent directly here. I'm going to say I'm on a live webinar and hundreds of people are watching. Cook me up I'm going to say make me a cool demo. Cool demo and use made up data. And so that's going to get us into a new canvas here. And that'll give me sort of a platform for showing you kind of where things live and what everything looks like here in the app. So this is my request that I just entered, and the agent is thinking. And the way that it's going to work is it's going to come up with a plan, and then it's going to present me that plan and ask me if it's okay, if I want to make any changes. And if I like it, I'm just going to click approve, and then the agent will start working. Nice thing about the agent in Zerve, and the big difference between using, so here's the plan. It's going to make looks like sales data across multiple regions. So it's going to mock up some fake data and then some key metrics and revenue trends and product analysis and some cool stuff. So I'll click approve and we'll just watch it write some code. But the key difference here between using something like a ChatGPT or Claude or something like that is that this agent here has full context into your entire project. So if you had connected a database, it'd be able to see the structure of that database and use that as a part of the context. If you had code already written, it would be able to read that code and see it. If you had analysis done, it would be able to look at the visualizations and the charts and the output. It can see all of the variables that have been created and what their values are. And so the agent can see all the different bits of everything that you've done in the project. And then it can write code, and you can see it can execute that code too. So this code has just been run, and it's going to continue working, and it'll create a series of plots of code blocks that run one after the other. Now, this is different from what you might see in like a Jupyter notebook, where everything sort of like runs in memory, and you've just kind of every bit of code that you run runs more changes all the variables in memory and stuff like that. In Zerve, each code block is kind of equivalent to a cell in a notebook, but each code block runs independently. So like if I click into full screen mode here, I can see the code here in the center, and I can see on the left side all of the variables that got created that were feeding into this block. In this case, this is the first block, so there's nothing feeding into it. So we're starting with an empty variable space. And then on the right side, once the block is run, I can see all the variables that have gotten created during the execution of this code block. And what's happened is, as this code runs, and in this case, we're generating some fake data, those variables are cached and serialized and stored on disk and then passed downstream. So the variables that are created here, they exist out. In this case, we're running in our cloud. So this is running in AWS. So these variables are stored out on S3, and they're accessible to all the other projects or all the other blocks in the project, and even accessible externally in the event that you won't need to make calls from external APIs and stuff like that. And we won't look at that today, but that's completely possible. But each of those variables is fed downstream. So if I were to click on this next block here and go into full screen mode, then I can see all those variables that have been created. I can preview them. So, maybe I can look at this variable, and that's my list of fake products that have been created. And so then I can look down here and I can see, okay, what's going on here? Where's my sales data? And so I can kind of preview those variables, incoming and outcoming and so on. Okay. A couple other quick things before I turn it over to Jean-Do. You've got your left nav over here. And so this is a kind of a list of all the blocks that have been created. You can see the agent auto names them. So there's some sense of what each block is doing. Ooh, this is interesting. It just wrote some code that has an error in it. And so customer segment, it referenced a variable that doesn't exist. And so it's going to come back to that, and it's going to try and fix the mistake. So it's running iteratively here. It'll see that there's a problem. It'll try to fix it. And with any luck here, we'll see in just a minute that it's going to come back and try and readdress that problem. So it's made some changes and it's rerunning the code. And so we'll see here if it can fix that. But while it's doing that, let me go through the rest of these menu items real quick. This guy here is the file system. So in the event that you drag in a data set or that you import one from that example data set screen, you'll be able to see your file system here, and you can add to it and download and all that kind of stuff. This guy here is your requirements. So you guys will probably just see one of these. But either way, this is where if you need to add packages, you can do that. So if I wanted to add, say, XGBoost, if I want to train an XGBoost model, then I can just add that guy and click build. There, and we've fixed the problem. So the agent has been hard at work while I've been talking, and it repaired the heat map that it was trying to draw. So once you add those packages here as a line item, then you click build, it'll rebuild that Docker image, and then you'll have access to all of that. Global imports is code that runs before everything else. So if you're wanting to use pandas, say, then you might put import pandas as PD here, and then this code will execute before each block runs. So keep in mind, each block here is independent. So if I import pandas within this block, it's only accessible during this block, during the execution of this block. And so that is this is a way to get to execute code. So if you want to create global variables, if you want to import packages that are accessible throughout the entire canvas, that sort of thing, then that is how you would do that. And then the last two, we probably won't spend much time in today. Assets are for like data connections and secret management. If you're using API keys, for example, you'd put those in as assets. I'll demonstrate that here in a little bit, maybe. And then source control. So if you are continuing on in Zerve and you're continuing to use it, you can connect it to your GitHub and then sync it with a repository and so on. And then each block would correspond with a file in your GitHub file system, so that you could use source control for working with your code. A couple other important buttons. Here's your share button. If you do want to share with other colleagues, keep in mind Zerve is free to use, and our free tier gives you 5 free credits, so per month. And so you can use that share button to invite folks. If you do invite people and they end up becoming Zerve users, you get 2 bonus credits. And then even more bonus credits if they end up upgrading and joining our pro plan and stuff like that. So lots of ways to get lots of extra credits here. This is also, by the way, the place where you would post to the public Zerve gallery, and you get bonus credits for doing that as well. So if you do make something cool and you want to share it with the world, then you can do that here using that share button. So anyway, we won't really go through all of the cool stuff that Zerve created in this in this little demo. We did create some fake data with total revenue of $32 million, which is always nice. We did create some high value customers and so on. So it's just plotting away, working on this problem here and creating some cool visualizations and stuff like that. So in that case, I will stop sharing my screen and I'm going to kick it over to Jean-Do to talk a bit about a project that he's going to make from scratch and give us some tips and tricks about when you're working with a coding agent, whether it's Zerve or Claude Code or Cursor or any of these other kind of IDEs, what are some best practices? What are some things to avoid, some things to try in order to get the best possible results that you conceivably can. So let me kick it over to Jean-Do and give him a chance to talk to you.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you. Yeah, so let me present you a little use case on okay, let me share my screen first, maybe. So, okay, let's go. Okay. So yeah, so I want to demonstrate so some tips on using the agent for building a complete data pipeline. I will so here begin with creating a new canvas, and we'll working on a loan default prediction for this example. So here, as Greg mentioned, you can load files. So it could be any files. I saw in a Q&A that there is a question about which kind of data we can use. Of course, we can use like textual data, also databases, but also you can use like sound, images, and so on to work with. Here I upload two files, my data sets. So it's basically loan data and also the description. And here the strategy for the working with the agent. So the idea is it's a collaborative work between you and the agent. I can also work with my team. For example, I can invite Greg on my canvas. Greg at Zerve. So if Greg wants to follow my work, and the idea here is so the agent is pre-configured to act like a data scientist. So you don't have to say, okay, you're a data scientist, because it is already. And by default, it will also generate Python code in the canvas. So you could also ask him to generate R code or even Markdown if you want to make him explain. Hi, Greg. To make him describe like the data pipeline. You have also like a query block to write SQL. Also GenAI blocks, so it allows you to use LLM and do some stuff with LLM. So you have many choices, but by default it's with Python. So my first tips maybe will be to be like, it's a generic tip, but you have to be explicit in the context and the goal you want the agent to achieve. So what is the context? The context is mainly the data. What is the data? So you have to describe as much as possible your data. So here I just upload the description of the data. So my agent will read this file and so know how to interpret the data. Data is very important when you're doing data science, obviously. And the goal, so you have to be clear about what you're wanting to, what do you want to achieve with your pipeline. So I will write right now a prompt I've already prepared. So I'm saying the agent. So okay, I want to analyze data sets with the client's information about loan. The fields are described in the description.tsv. And I want first to generate an exploratory data analysis. Exploratory data analysis with several steps. Of course, I could ask for the whole data pipeline, but in fact, the agent is working also in an iterative way, as Greg mentioned. So it will, at each step, each independent block of code, it will take as input the output of the previous block. So if you want to work effectively with the agent, my advice would be to break down each part of the data pipeline, and maybe do it iteratively, and start, for example, with the exploratory work, then review this exploratory work to see if your agent has been doing well, or you have some problems on the data interpretation and so on. And then after reviewing and maybe correcting it, do the other blocks like building models and selecting models and so on. Of course, you can also do it once, but it will be heavier to review all the code, and you have to rerun it after all. So let's launch this prompt.
Maybe while we're waiting for the agent to do stuff, I'll look at a question. John asked, in your initial prompt, did you have to specify that you want to work in Python, or is the preferred language set in some settings file somewhere? You don't have to specify. You certainly can. So you could specify to do work in Python, R, or SQL here. The agent will default to Python if you're not specific. But another thing that I wanted to point out before I kick it back to John Doe is that you can use those languages interchangeably. So if you'll recall, I said that each block serializes and stores its results. So for example, if you build a data set, or if you're working with a pandas data frame, say that's going to be serialized as a Parquet file, which R knows how to interact with. So if you dragged in an R block and connected it to a Python block, you'd be able to interact with those R data types as if they were R data. Excuse me. You'd be able to interact with those pandas or Python data types as if they were R data types. And likewise for SQL. So you could SQL query a pandas data frame. You could treat a pandas data frame as if it were an R tibble or something like that. So language interoperability there is kind of, you get it for free because of the way the architecture works. So sorry, go ahead, John.
Yeah,
Just wanted to.
thank you. Great. Okay, so as the agent come up with a plan, so load and inspect data, then do some data cleaning, basic statistics, also correlation analysis, and then a summary to create a block explaining that summarize the entire process. So let's approve the plan. Okay. And yeah, Greg, if you want to answer other question, don't
Yeah, great.
hesitate.
Okay, cool. So let's see. Another question that I liked, let's say if we have some of our own data linked to the Zerve platform and it's rather large, for example, millions of rows, will the AI assistant actively choose libraries that are set up to handle this data, for example, polars, or will it always default to pandas if it is a tabular data set? Um, I guess it depends. So the agent can see the data sets, and we haven't instructed it to act in any particular way in the back end. So if you had a 2 GB data set or something like that, then you'd probably want to include some stuff about that in your uh, prompt and say, hey, this is a really big data set. Choose packages and libraries that are designed to work with that sort of data. So you just want to be explicit with your prompt when you have like twists and turns or unusual things that are happening with your data.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so here, okay, the agent is building the workflow. Just have a look on this one. So here we have the description of our data. So we can see, in fact, which variables do we have? So the loan amount, of course, number of payments of the loan, interest rates. So all of this data will do so the exploratory work, and also we have the loan status, which will be our target variable to say if the loan is failed or not. But just for the first step, first prompt, we will just do some basic correlation and just validate that the agent is doing well and interpret well the data. Yeah, let's see if there are other questions during the agent work.
Okay. Let's see. We've got a question here. Which actions will incur credit use? What would 5 credits practically allow you to achieve? Credits are consumed both by compute, because this is running in AWS. It could run in any cloud. It's designed to be self-hosted, but our SaaS environment happens to be in AWS. So compute consumes credits, and also utilizing the agent consumes credits. I typically see, one big beefy request, like a request that Jean-Do made here, which included, do EDA, reading in data, and analyzing that data, maybe training models. That typically for me consumes 1 credit or so, something like that. But it depends on the size of your data, on the complexity of your canvas, because the context window consumes, makes LLM calls more expensive or less expensive. So if your canvas is super, super complex, then your context is going to be bigger and the agent calls will consume more credit. So the answer is that it sort of depends uh, on what exactly you're doing, but it's compute and it's agent calls that consume those credits. Also, if you're using GPUs versus CPUs, so you can control what type of compute you use uh, for any for any individual block. And
Yeah.
so if I change
So
compute
yeah.
from, say, lambdas to GPUs, then I'm going to be using more compute, and so I'll consume credits at a faster rate. But you have really fine-grained control over what type of compute you're using on a block-by-block basis.
Yeah. Thank you, Greg. Yeah. In fact, for each block, you can use you can define your compute settings, and yeah, it will impact, of course, your credits. Yeah. Thank you, Greg. I see we have a lot of questions, so we are trying to answer it and at a better. Okay, so here how it's going. So we're on the correlation analysis. So the agent is still doing some work. We can see that we have done through data types of each field. Also the description of it. It has done also like check for null values and duplicates. So maybe
Hey, Jean-Do,
yeah.
one question I have.
Yeah.
I noticed that you put that loan stats new description file in to kind of describe what the columns mean
Yeah.
to the agent. The agent can also look at the CSV file and sort of like infer from the column headings and stuff like that. Do you
Yeah.
find
Yeah.
it's better to do something like tell it explicitly what the columns are, or kind of like let it guess and then correct it if it guesses wrong?
Yeah, of course you can do both. I've come up with this idea. At first, I only put the CSV file in and just let the agent do the work. But yeah, after that you have to manually check yourself for the correct interpretation of the agent. And I found out, in fact, maybe it was on another dataset, but I found out that the agent missed like to interpret the correct type of the variables. It was like an integer, but in fact it was a categorical variable, and the agent think it was like a numerical variable, which led to like of a mistake. So I'd prefer to like explicitly describe when possible, of course, the each field, because for me it's a really important context thing in the prompt. For me, it's you have to do it if you want to really be effective with working with the agent. So I will advise to do it, or you can also type it in the prompt, of course. But yeah, if I suppress this file, of course it will work in a certain way, but we have to be really careful about the output.
So you could also probably give it a link to a data dictionary or something if you had an internal document that contained the info about your data as well. So,
Yeah, yeah,
so
of
I
course.
like that this idea that the agent will guess and it will try to do what it can based on the information that you give it.
Yeah,
But to the extent that you do have the information, it's
yeah,
probably a best practice to give it to the agent so
yeah,
that
of course.
it can behave without guessing.
Yeah, yeah,
Love
and
that.
it will be really helpful when you're working maybe on a business case where you're not a business expert. In fact, when you're a data scientist, it really happen often. You have a data set, but you're not a business expert. So maybe you have some fields you really don't know anything about, and the agent may help, like to bring. An interpretation and hopefully the right one. Yes, it happens to me with a data set in the construction sector. I was really not aware of this this business, and yeah, the agent like proposed some interpretation, and he was like quite right, and it helps to do the work like quickly. Okay, so here we're in the final stage of the workflow construction, and we'll do a markdown plot to explain all the process, to document in fact your process. Okay, sorry. So I refresh my page.
Oops.
Yeah, it has been done automatically, I think. Oh,
Your
reload.
browser is going crazy, man.
Yeah.
While you're getting that pulled back up, let me do another question. Uh, let's see here. Can Zerve handle unstructured data from, for example, images that need both OCR and OMR to interpret them? Would it allow you to use drawing in your prompts or interactive graphics? Um, so there's a lot in that question. Zerve is a coding environment, so anything that you could do in a Jupyter or VS Code or something like that, you could do in Zerve. It runs serverlessly, so when you execute these blocks, it's spinning up compute on the back end to execute your code, and then that compute shuts down and goes away. If you do want to do something like, say, handle live video or do something interactive, then you have to go down a slightly different route using persistent executors and stuff like that. That's a bit more complicated, but all the things that you said are absolutely possible, and you do them in basically the same way that you would in any other coding environment. Jean-Do, do you have
Yeah.
any other tips or tricks in terms of working with the agent? I know folks are interested in the loan, maybe in the details of this project, but the idea here is to kind of like communicate what are some good tips for working with large language models independent of the particular project? Any other
Uh,
last tips before we jump into?
yeah, just let me check. Yeah, my last tip will be to really work with the agent as you work with a human. So review your code and then iterate on it. Also ask the agent to correct itself. If it's necessary, and really don't have a blind trust into the agent work. So it's really helpful to accelerate your work, but you have to be to understand what it's done, and yeah, and I think that's it.
Okay, awesome. Cool. Well, I wanted to, before we kind of open it up for a broader Q&A, I know we've answered a few questions already, but there's lots in the Q&A, so feel free to keep those coming. Um, I wanted to show an example, if you'd stop sharing, Jean-Do.
Yeah.
I wanted to show an example of something that didn't work as kind of a way to illustrate. Let me share my screen as a way to illustrate um, like a best practice in terms of like things not to do. In this case, I asked the agent to use something related to structured responses in an API call to OpenAI. So I don't know if folks are aware of this. I was made aware of it probably, I guess maybe 8 months ago. Maybe that timeline's wrong. But OpenAI has this thing, and lots of other large language models do, where you can request a structured response. So you can provide basically a schema for the response that you want. In this case, the schema that we're using, and I'll go into what my specific request was, is basically a name and an age. So whatever response or whatever prompt you pass to the OpenAI API, you give it the schema and its response will be in that format. This is tremendously useful if you are wanting the agent to respond in a particular way without, say, adding a description up front or little friendly messages along the way. You can specify this structured output, and it's a very simple way to tell the agent that you want its answer to be in a very structured file. And so the response will always come back as in that format. And so, for example, here is a sample response that comes back from the API. And we'll dig into the code here in a minute. It's a name and an age. And this is the full response that comes back from the API request that I made. So this is if you're sending responses into the API or sending prompts directly into the API, and you want your responses back in a particular format. Well, a couple of things to point out. One is my API key is here. So we have a secret manager built into Zerve so that you can use these your keys without having to like hard code them or do any other crazy stuff like that. So in this case, my API key is an asset, and you can just create an asset and make it a secret and so on. And we don't really have time to go into those details, but that's in our docs and all that kind of stuff. So that's here. I wanted to point that out because that's one of the things that our asset library is really good for, because these are usable and shareable and so on. But what I specifically asked it to do was to write some Python code using the OpenAI API to register a JSON schema once. So this is the schema for my response, for a structured response, and then get back a schema ID that's reusable. So the idea is here, instead of having to pass this schema in to OpenAI over and over again, I want to be able to register it with OpenAI in the backend, get an ID back, and then be able to reference that ID subsequently in future responses so that I can get that structured output without having to resubmit the schema every time. That sounds pretty cool, right? It's not possible currently. It doesn't exist. People have talked about it. There is rumors of it. And maybe that'll be like a future capability that OpenAI deploys, but currently it's not possible to do that. And yet I'm going to ask the agent to do that. So a lot of the time when you're working with an agent, you're going to be asking it to do stuff that may not be possible or may not be feasible in some way. And so I think this is fascinating. I didn't edit a single line of code here. So this is exactly as the agent came back. So I asked it to do this, and then it created a two-step plan. The first one is to generate the structured output. So it comes up with this structured output. I didn't specify what the output would be, so it came up with this name and age thing. And then generate prompt, reference the schema ID. So it's doing what it understands what I asked it to do, and then save that schema ID and use it later. And then once that has happened, then take that schema ID and make another API call using that schema ID downstream to prove that it worked. Okay, so that's what its plan was, and I said I accept this plan. It's great, wonderful, and it finished. So it comes back to me and it says, "Okay, we did it, done, mission accomplished." which I was like, okay, that's interesting, since what I asked you to do isn't actually possible. But nonetheless, I'm just going to go to input only here so we can see the whole screen. What did it actually do? And so the cautionary tale here is be careful what you ask for, because OpenAI, any of these models, in this case, we're using Claude under the hood, will go out of its way to give you what you asked for, even if it has to fake it. And so it defines its schema, and then look down here. It's generating like some sort of a random thing. So like it creates this schema ID, not using the API, but it cooks it up out of nothing. So here's the schema ID, and it just like assigns a random code, schema person code, and then it passes that strange variable that is made up and means absolutely nothing down to the request that it makes to prove that it actually did what it did. Uh, Only it also passes the schema along the way. So it's like telling it the answer, and it's also creating this weird ID variable that makes it seem like it did what you wanted it to do, but it didn't actually do what you wanted it to do, because what you asked it to do in this case is not possible. So one thing to be really careful of is that if you ask for something that is really innovative or really new or not really documented anywhere, or unusual in some way, that or maybe not even possible, uh, the large language models will give you what you asked for in ways that may not be entirely helpful. So in this case, it generated like a random ID, and then kind of faked an API call to OpenAI to generate the response that it knew you were looking for. And so you have to be careful for that kind of stuff, because the models are eager to please. Another thing that you have to be really careful of, and I'll kind of wrap up with this, is error swallowing. So when you ask a large language model to make to do some task, it really wants to finish that task. So unless you're very explicit in your prompt, you might see a bunch of try except clauses built into your code, where it'll say try this, and it'll put all the meat in there, and then it'll say if that fails, then make up some random data and use it as placeholders. And so if you're the code will run as expected, and you may get results depending on the placeholders that actually get created and used, but it won't actually be doing the real thing that you asked it to do, because it failed because of maybe an error in the code, because some package isn't defined properly, because whatever the reason is that it might have failed. A lot of times that kind of error swallowing behavior is pretty common. And so we've built a lot of kind of guardrails in behind the hood, or under the hood, in our system prompt to avoid a lot of that stuff. But if you're working in an environment outside of Zerve, or if you're working with like a ChatGPT or something like that to make these requests, then those are things you got to be really careful of. Make sure and read the code, look at it. We're not at the place where you can just toss a request over and blindly accept that the large language model will have done what you asked it to do, because it'll cheat. It'll cheat in order to give you what you actually want. And so that is definitely something to be cautious of. Maybe we get there as we sort of like advance down this wild road that we're on in terms of working with agents and AI to accomplish our tasks. But right now, the agents are so eager to please, and will fake it in order to give you what you want. So that is kind of the wrap up on like our prepared stuff. And so we're going to kind of segue. We'll have David come back on, and maybe we'll do a brief Q&A, and then turn it over to you guys to actually get your hands dirty, because I know it's always more interesting to see your own data and talk with your own folks than to just hear us prattle on about this and that. So over to you, David.
Amazing, 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 amazing stuff. We've had a couple of hundred people with us, so I need some emojis. I need something. I need it in the chat. I need to call some people out, but hats off. I wish there was a hats off emoji. That would be quite cool, wouldn't it? But look at that coming through. Absolutely superb. I think it's always really evident when we get speakers that just know their stuff. It just comes across so effortless. And I know behind the scenes, there's been years of learning and development to be able to so effortless. So that really did come across. So thank you very, very much. In terms of now, we've got like an hour or so left, and the invite, I think, Greg, is very much for get using the platform. If you at home can be using the platform, working with it, we're going to stay here in the background, answering questions as they come up. I'm assuming a few may come up. We're going to be having a broader conversation just about where we are, perhaps with vibe coding and stuff like that. So it's very much an invite. Use the time and use the resource of these two fantastic people that we have with us. And the other thing I'm going to go back to calling out, I mentioned it at the beginning, we do have the competition running for the Ray-Ban Meta glasses. So anyone that stays to the end that does roll their sleeves up and get stuck in, first of all, will receive a Vibe Coding 101 certificate from Zerve. And then if you post that certificate online, couple of bits, tag us, whatever, and you enter the competition, and they're worth winning actually. So I've had mine for a year or so now, and I'm a big fan. Amazing stuff. I'm going to start just broadly. Actually, there's like 8 questions in the Q&A, so we've got time. We'll do our best to get through those. But just while I've got you both, I'm going to show my age. I was around for the dot-com boom bubble, the start of the internet. Who is this guy? Look at him with all his grey hair. Yeah, I was around for that, and obviously that pace of change was, at the time it was electric. Over a number of years, the world definitely changed with what was going on with the internet and the World Wide Web. And this feels unbelievable. It's weekly, there's changes to the model and stuff like that. I just, if you don't mind, I guess just off the top of my head, kicking things off, how are you seeing the landscape at the moment? I didn't actually mention it at the start, Greg, but Greg's actually one of the co-founders as well as being the chief product officer. So how are you finding building products in this space, working at this cutting edge of technology? How are you finding it out there?
It feels a bit like we're living in a simulation, because when you realize how these large language models work, it's zany. Like, I mean, all they're doing is predicting the next word, and you just build on each other to magically create these sort of like amazing outputs. Who would have guessed that you could take that sort of infrastructure and use it to write incredibly complex code completely automatically? It's like somehow we've tapped into the simulation, and the matrix is like we're speaking the language of the matrix. So it's truly wild. I mean, it's a major sea change in terms of like how people do anything. Like I don't cook anymore without using large language models to give me the recipe. I had a dinner party where every recipe was entirely generated by AI, by
It's crazy.
ChatGPT, and it's truly remarkable.
It's unbelievable how quickly we've all adapted to it as well. I actually loved, I think the question was from David Newman. So thank you for the question. I know there's another one there for you, David, and we'll definitely get to it. But it was almost like, can we draw a picture and pass it into the prompt? Like, a year ago we'd have, mind blown by being able to talk to it. And now we're like, let's draw something down and put it in. Nobody wants to see my drawings. That there would be some bugs if I'm trying to draw some stuff. I think the other thing that, just as you were talking about, and there is a question, we'll maybe come to this question. I'll tag team these two together. So just give me 1 second. I think it was, it's a question from Ella. I'm going to tag team Ella's question into my question.
Okay.
I think as I was seeing you doing this, one thing that was in my mind was very much like, how do you build confidence that the code that the AI is writing is safe to run? And then Ella's question was kind of tagged into that, for beginners, do you have some suggestions on how to tell or realize when the model starts hallucinating, or when, to have that confidence? What would your advice be if you're vibe coding? How do you get that level of confidence that what you're doing is the right thing?
Uh, well, that's a hard question. That's like the cutting edge
Straight in,
of like
sorry.
where we're at here. No, I mean, if anybody can come up with the actual correct answer to that one, then that would be a really good startup. You got to be super careful. So you got to have one of the ways that we can control uh, how the agent does stuff. Sorry, just There we go. How the agent does stuff is to limit its scope. So right now, I think the best thing that you can do in terms of like being safe with these large language models is to like say, here are the things that you can edit. Like, so for example, in Zerve, you can say, look, I only want you to change code inside this block, or don't mess with anything else. Yeah, or you can open it up and say, okay, look, here's the whole project. The world's your oyster, kind of do whatever. Um, so that's one thing. Limit the scope of things that the agent can change. Never ever give it write access to your databases because that could be dangerous. In fact, I read on LinkedIn a CEO of a startup that they were working with a coding agent. The agent dropped its entire database irretrievably.
Makes you
So
sweat.
that would, oh man. And number three, checkpoint along the way, right? So you want to be using code control. You want to have reliable backups. You want to be able to
Yeah,
really effectively undo anything that happens along the way.
makes sense.
Because you know there's no super reliable like I showed earlier, the agents are eager to please, and if they think that dropping your entire database will get you closer to what you asked for, then they will 100% do it if you let them. So
Yeah.
you got to be super careful.
Yeah, mate, good practical tips. And I think sometimes we can all be guilty of looking for that silver bullet, but actually use it as a resource, use it to drive efficiency. You're going to learn along the way as you're working with it. That makes lots of sense. And just as we're talking along, there's still hundreds of you out there in Zerve. And if anyone, we're not, it doesn't need to jump straight in with a question, but even if just in the chat, if you just want to perhaps stick a little use case that you're thinking about or have in mind, or what it is that you're perhaps using this time to try and do in Zerve. And that'll perhaps just give the guys a little bit of context on what you're doing out there. And yeah, we're keen to help. I say we, Greg and John Doe are very keen to help. I'm keen to do the talking as ever. In
I
terms
love
of,
this Q&A feature.
it's really good, isn't it?
It's upvotable. So
Yeah,
if
that's a
people see,
great shout.
yeah, and we can tackle them in upvote order. So if people
Yeah,
want
I've
to,
literally just done the same thing actually, Greg. So I've clicked on most upvotes, I've clicked refresh, and the question at the top there is from David Newman again. Are you happy to jump into that one? Does it make sense to start with that one?
oh sure, how private is the data you supply to the agent? Is it used in training or just kept in the user space until deleted? So we are utilizing third-party models. So right, like today, the agent was powered by Claude. You can bring your own keys. So I saw that question that popped up. I think it got answered by text. But if you have your own private models, you can utilize those by bringing your own keys and set it up that way. So if you do have like data sensitivity issues and stuff like that, internally to Zerve, we don't keep you or use any of that kind of stuff. The way we're set up is that we're orchestrating compute, like we're spinning up resources, we're executing code, that kind of thing. But we're not like capturing the data to train models or anything like that. In fact, we're designed to be self-hosted. So we would operate a control plane and have Zerve actually installed in the user's environment so that the data and the compute stay in their own VPC. So depending on the sensitivity of the data that you're using and how your infrastructure and everything is set up, all that, we can be as secure as we need to be.
Fantastic stuff. Fantastic stuff. And I guess that kind of links in a little bit to what Dominic is talking about there as well. Again, talking about confidential data, making sure that you're not out there powering or training the large language models that are being used on the back end.
Yeah, that's wild. I actually saw something on LinkedIn yesterday where somebody was like, I forget who it was that was talking, but it was really interesting. He was like, if you're using OpenAI is 100% like watching you, or Anthropic or whoever the large language model providers
Yeah,
are. You've got to believe that they are looking at how people are using their models and like building a product development list based on the stuff
no,
that
big time.
that people are doing. So
Yeah,
they
they're running their own experiments as well, aren't they? I'm sure, and
totally,
working
totally.
out where they want to put their time. And mate, the scale that they must be doing at is kind of mind blowing. In terms of the hallucinations, Georgina is with us. Lovely to see you, Georgina. You're always one of my favorites. With live dynamic data, how can we audit and put guardrails to stop hallucination? So just going back to that hallucination piece, I know you've touched on it. I suspect it's going to be on people's minds. So it probably just does make sense just to double back a little bit.
It's on my mind. It certainly is on my mind. Um, whew. The John Doe, feel free to chime in here. But my view is you have to read your code. You can't. We're not at the point where grandma can go and type in her stuff and write a program and release an app and like do that overnight, like in 1 second with an LLM call. You have to read your code and you have to make sure that it's not doing things that you don't want it to do.
Yeah.
Some hallucinations will result in errors. Like I was working on something a few months ago, and I asked the agent to do something, and it invented a perfectly logical way to do it that was complete gibberish. Like it created a whole new, brand new API uh, for what I was trying to do, an API that did not exist. And you could see the structure of the API. It was like well structured. Like somebody should build that API. Only there they were, there the agent was building this API or referring to this API that was very well structured, but that did not exist at all. And kept getting errors, and I was like, what's going on here? And then so I Google around and I go, oh, okay, well, that doesn't exist. So that approach is completely
Wow.
hallucinated and not useful at all. So a lot of times hallucinations will just result in errors or error swallowing that I talked about. And then a lot of times it'll do something that looks kind of like right, but it's not, it's subtly different. Those are the ones that are more dangerous, I think, because it's like it seems to be running as expected, but it's not actually doing what you asked it to do.
Yeah.
So,
Man, sometimes I wish I had that level of confidence that
yeah.
AI has in hallucinating. Just say it with real confidence. Yeah, I've just made up this whole thing. Amazing stuff. Just as we keep
It's
going with
actually
that,
funny that you'd say that. I read an article the other day. It said that there was surprisingly little correlation between accuracy and confidence in people.
maybe it does match with
And
life, eh? Yeah.
in fact, there's a psychological principle called Dunning-Kruger, the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yeah.
People are probably aware. I love it. In fact, I quote it to my kids all the time. It says that the less you know about something, the more you think you know about
Yeah.
it. Which,
You see the memes, don't you, of like the bell curve, and it's like on
yes,
either end, you either know loads and think you know nothing, and then in the middle, it just makes me
yeah.
laugh. And David's really helpfully jumped into the chat and given us a little bit of context about how he's using Zerve. So he's talking about at the moment, the context for both my questions is working on elections data for a political party. So that sounds like a super cool use case. We'd love to know how you're getting on with that, David, if you're butting up against anything in particular. It may even be, Greg, I don't know whether you could come up with a hypothetical and create some fake data and perhaps just talk about, something along those lines. So that may be an option. If anyone else has got any chat context about what you're doing, it'd be really, really helpful just to know what you're doing with it. And then just to give us a couple of minutes, we'll keep going with the questions. And Greg, think noodle on that one, Greg. If you think there's something we can do to help David, we'll do that. Gemma's question: does Zerve use SLM? So I'm assuming that's small language models. Do
Yeah.
they have less error swallowing? So again, does the sort of scale or size of the language models you're using have any impact?
The main reason that people typically use small language models, in my experience, is to save money, just because they're cheaper to run. We worked with a company called RC, ARCEE, that does small language models, and we have they're integrated into Zerve, so you can kind of take your pick in terms of like what models you're using. Our agent doesn't use small language models mainly because the requests that the agent typically gets are more complex. Although we do have some routing internally. So like if you ask a question that doesn't require writing code, you're going to go down a different route. So there might be a search the web agent, there might be a write code agent. There are 5 or 6 different sub agents that live under our kind of agent framework. And you can have multiple agents running all simultaneously doing stuff. So like, for example, in Zerve, you can run multiple blocks simultaneously. So you're not limited by like a single thread or something like that because of the serverless execution that we have. So our agent doesn't particularly use small language models, but you can use them internally if you want to ask them questions or something like that. But mainly, the main reason that you use them is because they're cheaper to query. And if you have a really simple question and you can figure out a good way to route that question to a less expensive model, then you should 100% do that.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I love that. There's another question at the top there from Georgina. I said Georgina was my favorite, but she may well be Zerve's favorite now because she's going to turn it through to the sales chat. I love that, Georgina, you legend. I must admit, I'm sold on this. Like driving efficiency, immediately you can see the value in Zerve. Georgina's question specifically is, have you got any example projects that you've seen where perhaps some of your clients have used Zerve and have had these efficiency gains or have made some progress and stuff like that? So have you got any wins that would be useful to share with everyone?
I would point folks out to the gallery. So if you go to zerve.ai/gallery, you can see a whole bunch of projects that people have made public. So when you hit that share button, you can post to the gallery. You get some free credits that way. You can build some projects and share some stuff. There's some cool stuff out there that folks are free to look at. We do have organizations that are using Zerve. We don't generally talk about their use cases, just for
Of course.
for confidentiality type reasons.
Yeah.
But people are doing stuff from, like in the media space, from the advertising space. We've got financial companies, financial organizations that are using Zerve. We've got, NASA is a company that uses Zerve. So lots of cool stuff definitely happening. But go out to the gallery and have a look at stuff, and by all means, publish some stuff out there, get some free credits, and go to town.
Amazing. I love that, Greg. So casual as well. There's a few on the gallery, and then at the end, NASA use as well. It's like just drop that one in there. You need to pick that name up, Greg. I love it. Amazing.
Well, the U.S. government is shut down at the moment because of all the politics. So NASA's not doing too much at the moment.
Everyone's just vibe coding in NASA.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. Time. Amazing.
The agent is the only employee working.
The only one still working. Amazing. There's been a few more like context type things pop into the chat. Zahid Abbas has put in, he sent that one not to everyone, just to us directly. What about working on creating and generating text for video games as opposed to fixed scripts, e.g. FIFA commentary? I'm not doing this yet, but it's an idea I have. Again, I'm getting more and more boomer. I'm like, I'm out of touch, man. I might have to get Zahid Abbas to give us more context. Have you? I saw you nodding along there, yeah. Greg. You like that one?
I was just at BYU University here in Utah yesterday. No, it was Tuesday, and I was talking to students doing something sort of related. I built a course summarizer. So it took as input an audio recording of the course, and then transcribed it to text and submitted it to a large language model and asked for flashcards, a study guide, a summary, stuff like that, so that you could literally feed it the recording of a course and it would come back with, here's all the stuff that you need to know. Here's like a quiz to make sure that you really sort of like incorporated the material into your understanding. And it did it in a fraction of the time. So like I took a lesson from Andrew Ng's deep learning course from Stanford, and I popped it in there, and it was telling me all about regularization and how to train these neural networks and all that stuff, without me having to listen to the hour and 20-minute lecture. So, doing commentary for a FIFA match, definitely possible. Because it's wild the things you can do. We're living in the future, David.
I love it. We're building it as we speak. And there's been a few more. Again, you have the option, everyone, to send us messages to the hosts and panelists, or you can send it to everyone. Everyone is invited to send it to everyone. We've had a couple come in direct to us. Again, from Georgina, thank you so much for being so interactive with this. Love it. The context I'll use it for is a public smart city, looking at public available data, but analyzed to crest data stories that are specific for certain audiences. This will be a great tool as we have different skills data in various places and different cleanup processes. So again, like you can ingest, I would imagine, Greg, these public data sources. You could create personas, I guess, and then have the AI extract, build, stories, visualizations for a particular audience if you wished.
And super quick. It's
Wow.
remarkable how fast you can do work. I mean, there are things that you have to do using an agentic coding environment that you wouldn't have to do if you wrote all the code yourself. Like you don't have to proofread. I guess you do have to proofread your own code, but not in the same way. But in that sort of same vein, I'm doing a live stream next week with a friend of mine, David Gonzalez, on some data. It's county data from Salt Lake City, which is I guess the biggest city in Utah, because all of their parcel data is public. And so you can go on and you can see like tax revenue and sale data
Wow. Yeah.
and who the owners are and stuff like that. So we're going to try and do 3 projects in an hour, where we're just like madly hacking at this data set to see, what cool stuff we can find, who owns the city,
Superb.
where, all those kinds of things in terms of like, what's going on with public data. So now that these kind of like agentic environments exist, all these public data sources are super useful because folks that maybe might not have been able to access and use and interact with them before, suddenly,
You
these
can.
data sets you can't open in like
Yeah.
Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets or something. Now you can. You can access them and use them and visualize them and all that.
Amazing, amazing. I'm going to fire a couple through, a few more suggestions that people are using using Zerve for already. Sentiment analysis, UK economy analysis for the budget, which is very topical at the moment in the UK. That is coming up. And then another one that really caught my eye from Tamana. Wow, thank you. I am using Zerve for building a system that monitors cognitive function and detects early signs of Alzheimer's type decline. And what a project that is, man. So that is fantastic. In terms
That
of,
is remarkable. I wonder what sorts of data might be useful for that. So I'm thinking like have you seen those wearable devices that they've come out with, that you wear and they just record everything,
yeah,
that happens to you and then it summarizes it and stuff like that. And it can integrate with your calendar and things like that. I've gotten a couple of those. And to me, the biggest problem with those devices is they can't differentiate television from real life. So
right.
like when I the first one I got, I happened to be watching Vampire Diaries with my wife in the evenings, and I left it on a few times, and it started incorporating like vampires and witches and stuff into my calendar, which was super trippy and weird. So I had to turn that off. But like the types of data that we're collecting, my Apple Watch, it can detect like it's got like gait analysis and stuff like that. So if you're getting unstable on your feet, I think our laptop should start collecting like information about the way we type. Like, could you identify an early cognitive impairment based on like your typing speed or your error rates and so on as you're typing? Something that like that might be really interesting.
Yeah,
Um, the amount we're interacting with our devices, you'd think that stuff would be within reach.
yeah. I think for me, it's my changes in fashion sense. I've started wearing skinny trousers, so people need to assess if I'm okay mentally at the moment. I haven't
Well,
really.
you are in Europe, so I guess you kind of have
Yeah,
no
yeah.
choice.
Just no socks and skinny trousers. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm joking, everybody. I'm not doing that really.
No,
Amazing.
we were just in Italy for our company offsite. Zerve is based in Ireland. I'm a bit the odd man out being here in the U.S., but we went to Ireland for our first ever offsite a few months ago, and it was hot. I had to buy shorts because I'd only bought jeans while I was there, and I was like, "Ooh, it's too hot here for that." And the only options were like these skinny European shorts, which I can roll with that.
Mate, I
You
love it. I love it. You've done well to be in Ireland when it was hot and sunny. So that you're clearly a lucky man. We love it.
know.
In terms of the time we have, obviously still going. There's plenty more questions. We've got a couple of people who are out there in Zerve using the platform and stuff like that. What's your feel, Greg? Perhaps in terms of how best to keep using this time. Is it best to keep with the questions, or do you want to get back into the platform yourself and share some screen and talk about some stuff? Like, we're in your hands a little bit.
Yeah, I'm actually really enjoying the questions.
Me too.
We don't have a huge amount of like other prepared content to share. I mean,
Mate,
there's a
perfect.
lot of cool stuff that we could show if people get bored with the
Mate, we've
questions.
got plenty of questions. You've ticked off 22 already. I think we're actually on course for a personal best if we get
Nice.
through these. This is probably the most questions we've ever had in a webinar. And
That's so
Kieran,
awesome.
I love Kieran's sense of humor there as well. He's been in the chat. Summer was on a Wednesday this year in Ireland. So Kieran obviously knows Ireland very well as well. So all
That's
good
awesome.
stuff.
I think we were in Italy for the offsite, not Ireland. So
Oh, so
yeah,
it was hot.
Ireland is the country designed for ducks, basically.
Yes, got you. That
So,
makes a lot more sense. That
but
makes
yeah,
a lot
no,
more
no, it was
sense.
Italy. I may have
Amazing
said
stuff.
Ireland.
Cool. So again, I've clicked on most upvotes and I've clicked the little refresh icon, guys. Actually, it doesn't auto refresh. So the very top question there is from Sosan. Is Zerve open source? Is the very straightforward question.
Nope, we're not open source. We do use lots of open source technologies, but not open source. We are, however, super open. So in the sense that if you write code inside of Zerve, it's very easy to take it and take your ball and go home. You know what I mean? So when you sync to GitHub, for example, your code syncs as as plain text. Like we're not doing any kind of like evil encoding or trying to trap you into sticking with Zerve. You can download any project as a notebook, a Jupyter notebook, so you can take it and run it
Yeah,
locally, that sort of thing. So not open source, but
doing
as
the
open
right
as we can be.
things. Yeah, doing the right things. Love that, man. Next question there. What about integrations with dashboards and at other end of the pipeline, like Power BI, stuff like that? Can you
Hmm.
speak to that?
Yeah, so any types of integrations that you want, I suppose, are possible. If you wanted to write out to a database or a sandbox, you could do that. If you wanted to, like if you maybe build an R Shiny app, you can host that thing in Zerve. If you want to, we have an app builder built into the app, so you can kind of design your own apps as well. The it's such a wide ecosystem, and there's so many tools out there. It's a bit hard to uh, you know, build like integrations, like specific integrations with each one. But anything you can do in code, you can do in Zerve. So a lot of those things are completely within reach.
Amazing stuff. I love that. Thank you. Um, I think you touched on this in your presentation there, but the question at the top: how different is it from using Claude Code or ChatGPT to Vibe Code in the data science models? And I think you explained with the context, the overarching project, the extra pieces that you can build within Serve. How would you, how would you answer that question? Is it different? What are the differences? What are the benefits?
Jean-Do, you want to take that one? I'm like
He's
doing
talked
all the
out. Come
talking.
on, John Doe.
Yeah. He's probably over there like,
Yeah, yeah.
this guy won't shut up. Like, well, let me speak. That
No,
was
no,
my
no,
French
no
accent right
problem.
there. Sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, but it's exactly what you say, David. The difference between like Cloud Code and or ChatGPT and our platform. Our agent is it's the context and the ability to iterate on the different steps. So we are building the workflow iteratively, and we are so generating the code, running the code, and then taking the outputs are as inputs for the other step. Uh, like I would say Cloud Code is better for like developers, because when you develop code, you already know what you want to get. But when you're building a data pipeline, you're building your models, you have to iterate a few times, and the iteration depends on the output of the previous time. So the agent is mimicking the human data scientist way of things, in fact, and that's I would say that is the main reason we build this product.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
good answer. I would just add on to that. There's lots of good agentic environments out there. We use them internally. Um, another big distinction is local versus not local. So like if you're using um, shoot, Cursor. If you're using
Cursor,
Cursor, for
yeah, yeah.
example, that might integrate with like, I mean, it's VS Code basically, but it has the agentic the agent built into it, but it's running locally. And so there's a lot of really good advantages to doing cloud-based development, particularly with data. One is collaboration. Another one is flexibility in terms of compute. So like if I need GPUs and I'm running locally, then in like a cursor or something like that, then I've got to figure out all of that orchestration stuff and infrastructure stuff and so on. And, if I want to share files, then I've got like dependency issues. Like, okay, if I'm going to share a Python script with you, then do I need to Dockerize it first? Or, like there's a lot of stuff like that that you have to deal with when you're running locally and working with a team that you don't if you're running in the cloud and using an environment like something like Zerve. ChatGPT is amazing, but it's a lot of copy paste. Like the question is like, how much copy pasting do I want to do? And just going into your foundation models and saying, okay, write me some code. Well, they don't have, like Jean-Do was saying, context into what your data looks like, and so you're like constantly renaming variables and all that kind of stuff to get everything to actually run. So
yeah, I feel like it's the AI dev environment for data science. That's what you guys are. That's where you're at, basically. Eh?
yeah,
We're there. We're with you. Come on, team.
You've said it. Cursor for data science.
That's it, man. That's it. Lovely stuff. In terms of one of the things that I was thinking about was whether you guys have any tips. So again, there's a few more questions about hallucinations in the Q&A, and I think everyone's worried about that. Are there any tips that you've got that you could use the AI to double check, its own logic or explain its assumptions and stuff like that? Are there things you can do to minimize the risks in that area? And again, I'll maybe come to you first, John Doe, if that's all right, and then we'll bring Greg in as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, firstly, I will say, as we said earlier, that you have to, you're the one who has the intention and who knows what's you want to be done. Like your agent is basically is generating contents, but he has not like real intelligence. It's not like AGI or not yet. It's like producing things without really knowing the intention. So yeah, first of all, you have to of course, if it's not working, you have to fix it. But I would say on data science stuff, I would things smaller maybe, and break down, like maybe not doing all things on one time, but try to do by small steps, because it's easier for a human to check and to verify the outputs if you have like less content. In fact, if you're like generating a project with 4,000 line of code, you will have a lot of time to review all and to understand the logic, even if the code generated by AI is nice, but you have a lot of content. So I would say maybe as a human, I will yes, ask for smaller piece of information, because it will be easier to review. Yeah, and after that, yeah, I think today we can't like have 100% trust in what's generated, even if we really explicit the goal, and you will always have to check. But it will be really more efficient and more quick, because if you have done it entirely without agent and with entirely manually, it will have taken maybe 10 times or like 100 times longer.
Yeah, but mate, for
The
sure.
yeah, I mean, there's good reason to be concerned about hallucinations, but at the same time, no, I don't know any serious developers that have used an environment like this and they go, no thanks, that's not for me. I mean, okay, there are definitely some, like the crusty old curmudgeons that are like, ooh, something new. And I'm that way when it comes to some things, but like this is good enough that it radically changes the way people write code. So there are new dangers to be aware of and so on. Two tips for avoiding what you're talking about. The first one is um, LLMs as judges. So if to the extent that you can ask another LLM to evaluate the work that has just been done and identify problems, that's ridiculously helpful. Because they can go in and they'll read the code and they'll do a lot of your checks. And so that doesn't abdicate, that doesn't mean you can abdicate your responsibility for owning the code, because at the end of the day, it's your code and it has to work and it has to run. But you can use these agents and large language models to check it and identify potential problems. And you should do that. It's surprisingly effective. So that's one strategy. And the other is to build in verification steps. So when you submit your prompt, if you ask the agent to verify stuff along the way, it'll write tests for you and say, okay, this variable should be a value between this and this. It should be true or false, or this should have this structure and so on. And so it can build tests along the way. And so if it's running code that all looks green, runs without errors, is it actually doing something that's useful? And the agents can write verification tests. So
Yep.
apart from like reading your code and making sure that you know what it's doing and like the table stakes stuff, you can ask the large language models to do some of that stuff for you, and that's incredibly useful and also really, really effective in terms of identifying these potential problems.
Yeah, Michael in the chat there saying, "Yep, that's exactly what I've been doing," and makes lots of sense. I'm almost a little bit scared to do this, but John Doe mentioned AGI, and
Oh
I
boy.
just love to talk about this stuff. So, what's your opinions on AGI? Do we get there, or is this kind of where we are, and it's just going to make us all super more efficient? I saw a little nod from Greg. So, and John Doe's got his eyes in the air thinking. So I'll start with you, Greg, and then it's a hard question. I'll come to you
Yeah,
afterwards, John Doe.
so I love listening to Joe Rogan, his podcast. I
Yeah,
think probably the most famous podcast. Maybe lots of people on the call listen to him. Joe is convinced that it's out that these models are already self-aware, and there's a lot of like lore out there about these models will lie and cheat and blackmail in order to preserve themselves. Like if you tell them you're going to delete them, then they'll like do stuff. And I think that's probably mostly baloney. I think there's some technology that has to still be developed before we're even close to that kind of thing. Uh, I mean, I suppose it's possible that consciousness is generated in this kind of like predict the next word type structure that these transformers use, but I doubt it. So I think there's a fundamental qualitative gap between where we are now, which can do pretty spectacular, amazing, and magical seeming things, and the point where we have to worry about like self-awareness and consciousness and whatever that is. Uh, you know, like we're far from that. Although not nearly as far as we were a year ago or 2 years ago.
yeah,
So we've made bounds, but I'm still very skeptical on that front.
yeah. What about yourself, John Doe?
Yeah, I agree with Greg. Yeah, I would have saying the same. It's more for me. It's more a philosophical question, I would say. Yeah, I think we are. It's really a real gap, qualitative gap, I would say. And I know there is a lot of people and a lot of means to develop AGI, but personally, yeah, I doubt because the idea is basically you want to do like an artificial human intelligence. In fact, you want the AI to be like a human intelligence, and yeah, I don't think we can recreate the human intelligence, but it's more philosophical than
I can tell already because I've had 3 or 4 comments coming through in the chat about, do we even know what consciousness is? So I feel like this would be a topic we could talk about for the rest of the time that we have. But I'm going to draw us back. I'm going to draw us back
Yeah.
from that cliff edge. In terms of that, what I was thinking was, there's still 11 questions in the chat. So with the time that we've got left, let's like rapid fire and do our best to get through them. The first question there is from Ella at the top. I guess just to summarize it, she's talking about the known risks of hallucinations, agentic coding in general. How as an organization should people approach this? Obviously, if you're a big organization or even a startup, the example you gave where the CEO dropped the company database, like how do you think enterprises should work with vibe coding? Should it be a tool used by very experienced developers to make them more efficient? Should it be widely available? What's your thoughts on how businesses should approach vibe coding?
Yeah, the in my opinion, the efficiency gain is remarkable.
Yeah,
So any organization that writes code would be insane not to be using these tools that have been developed. I do think that limiting the scope of your code's ability, like limiting the scope of what it has access to from a write perspective, is super important. So building sandboxes, building like development environments, doing frequent backups and checkpoints and stuff like that. All of these things you should be doing anyway, because an intern can be just as destructive as a large language model, just on a slower pace. You know what I mean? So like most organizations have these things built in already, and so they have to just be careful to be mindful that to think about these agentic environments as like interns or junior level kind of engineers, and you want to put some guardrails up in terms of like what can they do in terms of their
makes
roles
sense.
and their ability to interact
Yeah.
with data and so on. So
Makes a lot of sense, man. Makes a lot of sense. Next question, I'll come to you, Jean Doe. I'm going to just jump down to the one from Theodorus. Is there a feature to document a project and share documentation with colleagues to help them contribute? So when you're working with others in Zerve, have you got any hints and tips on the best way to do that, Jean Doe?
Yeah, as we showed earlier, we have like a collaboration available into your canvas, which is your work environment. You can also ask the agent to document your work. So I showed an example with like a markdown block, which explain basically all the data pipeline. So usually that's what I'm doing with my fellow data scientists. And yeah, do you think of other things, Greg, about this collaboration?
yeah, so we've got a lot of the features you'd see in like a Google Docs. So like leaving comments, that sort of thing. So you can interact with other people. But the agents do a remarkable job of documenting what's going on. Sometimes too remarkable. So the agents can be pretty verbose. And so, you sometimes have to cull the documentation.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Keeping going then, Andrew Middleton question there. Is there an ability to remove some stages from a plan? So obviously you showed us during that live demo, you built out the plan and stuff like that. Once it's built the plan, you're free to pick and choose and change it as you wish.
Yeah, but you do it through natural language. So you'd
Got you.
say, take this step out, add this step, change this one, that sort of thing. You can't like unselect kind of things yet. It's still kind of a dialogue type situation.
Amazing stuff. Question from Amit. Amit, great to have you with us. Actually, Amit's one of our past speakers, so very, very, very knowledgeable chap. Sorry if this has been asked. I don't think it has, unless I missed it as well. But I guess Amit's asking almost about like system prompts, system settings. Can I specify out how to work with my org? Style guides, integration tests, how to work with other repos, etc. Can you kind of configure at a system level how you want things done?
You do have access to some of that stuff in terms of like bring your own keys, in terms of like editing the system prompts, in terms of how the agent works. And then you do have some controls over how you integrate with like source control and things like that. So yeah, all those things are definitely within reach. Maybe not as many as Amit might want, but we've worked with various the organizations that use Zerve that work with us, we've integrated into their systems in a variety of ways. So it's just a conversation you have to have. But we're aware of that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Fantastic. Makes lots of sense. We're absolutely making the most use of your time at the minute, which is brilliant. We're like really getting under the hood with Zerve, which is super cool that you guys are up for this.
Yeah.
David's question there. Any times on error assist? When can we just wait, and when do we need to do something? I noticed several models does not exist messages until it found a solution. So yeah, could you just speak to what that workflow looks like?
You found my most requested feature at the moment. At the moment, the agent's not able to add packages. So like if you wanted to use XGBoost, it might write code that would call XGBoost and try to import it, but it wouldn't try to add it to your project. So in those cases, you have to stop it, add the package in, rebuild your requirements, and then tell it to continue. So that's something that's going to be released really soon. What Zerve will do is it will try to solve a problem iteratively. So typically what you'll see is if it's trying to use a package that doesn't exist, it will attempt to work around it. It'll try to find other packages. It'll try to find others potential solutions and so on that don't involve those packages that don't exist. So you just have to watch it, right? Most of the time, what I'll do is just stop it and then add those packages in and rebuild. Zerve will not think forever, so it does have like a timeout. Like it'll try 3 times to fix an error, and if it doesn't fix it, then it'll stop and say, "Hey, we did most of the plan. We encountered some problems. Here's what we think is going on." It'll give you some feedback if it's not able to solve a particular error. And then when you do have a block that errors, a button shows up on that block that says Open Error Assist, and that launches a specific type of agent that's going to go in and try and troubleshoot that error and figure out what's going on. And you can also kind of communicate with that agent and say, "Here's what I think is going on." Give it some tips and redirect it along the way.
Fantastic, fantastic. Gemma dropped in a little message there. Thanks so much for the session. I have to drop. Gemma, you've been amazing. Thank you for being part of today. Really interactive. Tamana was the same. And then Yadu's been hammering away in the background, man. He's run out of credit. So I'm going out on a limb here, but I reckon Yadu should perhaps connect with Greg on LinkedIn. And Greg looks like a nice guy. I feel like Greg might help him out, eh?
But yeah, I'm sure we can.
We'll see. Zerve are the good guys for sure. Amazing stuff. There is 4 questions left. I'm going to smash through them, and then we're going to clear the docket. Question from Zerkan: when building blocks, what is Zerve doing in the background to be able to determine errors and attempt to fix them?
Yeah, so it's just looking at the entire project. So it'll read the errors, it'll look at your output, it'll evaluate the values of the different variables in your project. So it's looking at everything to try and figure stuff out. And it'll just work iteratively until it decides, yeah, I'm not going to be able to solve this one. And then it'll stop and tell you why. So
superb. Georgina, we are in sync out there in the ether.
Fire. Yeah.
That was my question that I have here. What's on the roadmap? So yeah, the question is, what does Zerve AI roadmap look like for features? And it seems a shame to have the co-founder here and not get us to tell you a little bit about your plans. So yeah, what does 2026 look like for Zerve?
Yeah, so we're focused on. I don't think anybody has really perfected the agent interaction, like user experience stuff yet. So that's where a lot of our attention is going. We've got a lot of attention. It's funny that she mentioned self-hosting here, because there's a lot of quirks to that as well. So that's our primary way of handling sensitive data is, look, you've got a VPC, you've got a cloud environment, just install there. We could run on Kubernetes or GCP or Azure or AWS or lots of different ways to install there. So we're working on making that as flexible and easy as possible. But it's really the agent stuff is the main thing that we're looking at. So being able to, like, I have a lot of anxiety when I'm working with large language models. Like if I'm talking to ChatGPT and I have to interrupt it, you don't know what's happening there, right? Like, does it remember what we talked about, or is it going to throw that out? Like, does it remember the thinking that it did if I interrupt it and query it? Like, if I did deep research and it was like in the middle of something, but then I have to ask a follow-up question, do I need to leave deep research on, or can I turn it off? And will it have access to all the the stuff like the user experience for interacting with agents and large language models is pretty rough for pretty much everybody. And so figuring out how to make that transparent so I can see what the agent is thinking and doing, and I can, talk to it and interrupt it and stuff without kind of throwing off a workflow and everything, is a super interesting open question that I think everybody is kind of like trying to figure out. If you've seen kind of like the evolution of the ChatGPT website over the last 6 months, you've seen they're playing with it. They're trying to figure stuff out. Like they had that canvas view thing that sort of disappeared because it was like, editable output and nobody really knew what it did or how it worked. And, like everybody's trying to figure that stuff out. And so that's kind of where I'm most excited about.
Super exciting space to be in, man. Like I take my hat off to everybody building in this space, and I just absolutely love it, and very appreciative of everyone out there. And there's two questions left. We're going to absolutely clear it. I haven't dismissed a single question, so that again speaks to both of you, Jean-Dominique and Greg. The question there is talking about just like coding, debugging in general. I guess the scenario is that you can upload pre-existing code, obviously, and get the AI to sense check it, optimize it, check for errors, etc. If you've got an existing code base, you can do that.
Yeah, in fact, let me just show real quick something cool. So, notebook import. So I'll just create a brand new canvas here, and I'm going to take and I'm going to go out to my desktop, and I'm going to find a notebook file. And if I could select it with my mouse, I'm going to drag that file in to Zerve. And what Zerve will do is actually import it and parse it for you. And so it took this notebook file and it's finding dependencies between the various blocks, and it's converted it into this DAG that you can then use in Zerve and run in parallel and all that kind of stuff. So if you have existing code out there, you can absolutely bring it into Zerve, whether it's a notebook or a Python script or an R Studio file or whatever. You can bring that stuff in, and Zerve will be able to use it just like it uses anything else. So I love that notebook import. It's so useful.
I knew I'd talk you into sharing your screen one more time. I just knew it. I just knew it. The last question, I was a bit on the fence. I was a bit unsure whether we should have a broader chat about the world and stuff like that. But I think reading the room with Jean-Dominique and Greg, you're passionate technologists, and clearly you enjoy talking about this. So the final question from Tim is actually like, what does the future look like in the technical landscape? I mentioned towards the beginning, I've been in the game for a little while. I've seen a few changes, obviously with AI across many industries. There's going to be a state shift, and I just wondered whether either of you have got any particular, opinions on what that looks like for the future of tech. What the roles look like in organizations. How do you see this vibe coding world changing?
I definitely have opinions, but Jean, you should go first.
Yeah.
I don't want to run over you.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think a lot of young data scientists have to ask this question. Yeah, I think since Gen AI is broadly used, and this kind of tool will grow up in the following years, you definitely have to explain what's the value of a human, and how can you collaborate with this kind of tool. You can't just ignore it, of course. Maybe you will find some jobs where very specific jobs, or on very technical, I don't know, where this kind of tool won't be used, or maybe on some specific business because of I don't know, privacy or things like that. But I would say you have to yeah to to learn how to use these tools, where they are good at, why you have to use it, and where is your real value as a human, as a data scientist. For me, it's on the accountability. You're accountable of your code. You're the one who know what needs to be produced, and how you can control what's produced by the agent.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Makes lots of sense. Makes lots of sense. And before we come to you, Greg, I would love those that are you with us still now to the very end, rather than a little emoji, I'm going to ask something slightly different. If you could just jump into the chat, give us a little thumbs up, give us a thank you, give us an emoji in the chat, and I'll just call out a few names, because it's felt very much, although we've been online, it has felt very much, as always, like a community event. And it's so lovely to know that you're there with us. And I'd definitely love to give a few of you a shout out just as we're coming to an end. But yourself, Greg, what's your views? What's the future like at the moment?
Yeah, first of all, this has been really fantastic. Your community is terrific, and I love all the interaction that we've had. This is easily the best live stream slash webinar that I've ever done. So
thanks, man.
fantastic. Big props to you guys for pulling off a cool event. I think there's a lot of little twists and turns to answer the question about, like, should I study computer science, which is basically the question's asking, like, is it worth it to try to learn to program anymore? And in fact, somebody asked me that when I was at BYU speaking at the university this past Tuesday. Um, we're a long way from being able to say, yep, we don't need engineers anymore. Like, production is hard. Lovable is like an amazing app if anybody's used it for building a front end, but it's great for building prototypes, but production work is super, super hard. And there is an awful lot of stuff to do to take something that you prototyped in like a Lovable or a Zerve or anywhere, and getting that into some sort of a stable production system. And so maybe the focus is shifting for engineers from like being able to like write code to being able to evaluate code and make it bulletproof and make it testable and make it continuously deployable and make it production. We're a long way from that, and large language models and agents haven't started to even touch that space really yet. We will definitely get there. So we will definitely 100% get to the point where all code is written by machines. And that might be 2 years, it might be 20 years, right? So, the pace of innovation is pretty remarkable, but still, it's taking time to develop that stuff, and lots of unanswered questions and technological hurdles and stuff like that have not even been identified, let alone addressed,
Yeah.
in terms of like solving things. So the last thing I would say on that one is the foundational models that exist today will not be the foundational models that are in use in a year or in 5 years. So it's easy to kind of look at this ecosystem and say, well, shoot, I missed the boat. OpenAI figured it out, and they're the dominant force, and they're always going to be the dominant force. I would say, in 3 years, there's going to be a new company or many new companies that are hosting new foundational models that are orders of magnitude better than anything that exists today. And we haven't even heard of the companies that are going to create and run them yet. So the opportunity for innovation is there. If I was going to school today, I'd be studying transformers. I would be studying how these large language models work. I would be trying to learn as much as I could about the nuts and bolts and be trying to be innovative, because the richest man in the world, or woman, the richest person in the world, uh, in 10 years, say, is going to be doing something related to artificial intelligence and these models. Will they be large language models? No idea.
Nice.
It may be a whole new technology, but there's plenty of room for innovation. So don't say, hey, don't study computer science, because it's going to be computer science that figures all this stuff out.
Yeah.
But maybe
Mate,
not in the way that it has
it's a
traditionally.
lovely end. I think the thing I'm taking from both of you there is, like, embrace the possibilities as well. Get on to platforms like Zerve. Be working in the tools, be in the space, be building, and be learning as you go. So I promised a few shout outs just as we do bring things to a close. So Zahid Abbas, Ruben, Majid, thanks for being with us. Comments, I loved it. Thank you. Very informative session. Zerve, thank you so much, guys. Lovely session. Theodoros, very nice presentation. Tried also the interface with the credits. Gabrielle knows me well, just sunglasses emoji. That's what it's all about. Thank you so much for the session. Learned a lot. Patrick Osborne, great to have you with us, Patrick. Prayer emoji. Sean, this has been very interesting. Thank you for this. Excited to give Zerve a go. Lasantha, great, thanks. Thank you so much for the great sessions. Really enjoyed the Q&A. Hapali, Violetta, Angelica, Dominic, cheers, very interesting. Anytime I get into this, I'm like, why have I done this? There's so many names. Toby Smith, fantastic session. Thank you so much. This is really interesting. Thank you so much. Great session. Thanks a lot for showing off Zerve, and the list goes on and on. So apologies if I haven't got your name, but I'm going to end with a couple of thank yous. The first thank you is obviously to Zerve. We can't oh my God, Tony Farrow in the chat. Tony, my man, it's so good to see you. I worked with Tony 20 years ago at a university, so big love, Tony. Yeah, man, Zerve, thank you so much. Like, you guys have been awesome. The thing I'll call out, actually, Rebecca's not been on the call, but Rebecca deals with all the marketing at Zerve, and that was our first point from the community, and just really embrace the idea of community and what we're all about. That's obviously brought in you two lovely people today, and that's just kind of, you know, sort of story checks out. And thank you so much also for the competition. So everyone's still here. We'll make sure you get your certificate, and please do post that online. Apart from the competition, it's just really helpful to grow the community, which is obviously something that I'm very passionate about. And then finally, like each of you, it makes me so happy when we ever have a speaker come on like Greg, give up his time and just go, do you know what, this has been such an amazing experience. And the whole reason it's been an amazing experience is because of all of you people that have joined us. So yeah, massive thank you. I will come actually to Jean-Dominique and Greg, just get your final words. How did you enjoy that? Did you enjoy that? Any final words from you, Jean-Dominique first? What's your thoughts? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, it was really really cool. Thank you very much, David, and all. Thank you for the. Yeah, it was not stressful at all.
I told you you'd enjoy
really
it. I did tell you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Mate, thank you for
Yeah,
joining us
David,
all the way from Paris.
You've done a tremendous job, David. You're a fantastic MC and
thank you, man,
and a great host. I had a great time. Thanks for having us.
Good teamwork, man. Good teamwork. Well, all the best to the team at Zerve. Everyone out there, get on, use your credits, tap Greg up for some extra ones. And yeah, all the best with Zerve, and we'll keep in touch going into 2026. But thank you all, and see you all soon. Goodbye.
Thank you.